Hello and welcome to episode 3 of The Party Line. You're here with me and Omar and Geordie. Omar is in his house. He's too lazy to come to the recording studio this time around. But as always, we're recording on Aboriginal land. This land was stolen. It was never ceded, and we stand in solidarity with the struggle for Indigenous liberation in this country. We say always was, always will be Aboriginal land.
Riding out the party line.
Well, I think today we want to talk about what's going on in Gaza and Trump's peace plan and the fallout with all of that. But first, Geordie, you've been doing things on the internet recently?
Been doing things on the internet. That's what I do. And recently I shared the podcast, a link to the podcast in the Australian socialism subreddit. And the first comment that I got was, "Oh, amazing! More white men with a podcast. More white men on a podcast."
Omar, where are you from?
Dandenong. But before that, my parents are Lebanese, so It is exciting to be inducted into the prestigious ranks of the white men of this country.
And well, apparently as a white man myself, I can welcome you in as well.
Yeah, it's an awesome club. No, honestly, I mean, first thing is like you'd think in a socialism subreddit, people would have some awareness that white men have played some positive roles in the history of the socialist movement, like, I don't know, Karl Marx, Frederick Engels, Vladimir Lenin. So, judging people on the basis of their, identity is farcical. Like, haven't we moved beyond this, especially in a socialism subreddit? Maybe it was like Democratic Party of America subreddit, but like, yeah.
Yeah. And like, also I think, well, what about some of the people who are doing podcasts who aren't in the white man category? Like, doesn't Candace Owens have a podcast as well? Like, I don't think she's really contributed much positive to society with that one.
Oprah Winfrey is a real hero of the socialist movement for bringing diversity and intersectionality onto the mainstream.
But it does show the limitations of just sort of like judging people's politics just on the basis of like what is their sort of identity background, because it doesn't really tell you much about what they support, what they think about the world, what they want to contribute to changing it. Like there's so many different examples that you can think of. Some of them are just stupid because they obviously got crap politics, but it whittles its way into all different types of organising spaces where people who are literal capitalists can claim to represent progressive movements just because of their backgrounds. It, I think, creates a bit of a barrier to actually organising and, well, maybe not a barrier to organising, but limits the way that people can actually sort of understand what's going on around the world.
Yeah. But I think more importantly, the takeaway is, welcome to the party line with 3 famously white men, a Lebanese man named Omar Hassan and a Maltese woman named Anneke de Manuel. It is incredible, really. Like, congratulations, guys. I really think we can call you guys now.
Do we start earning some sort of wage for being white men? Like, is there a secret club that gives you privileges just for being that?
Yeah, the tax office actually sends a weekly a payment, really.
Don't talk to me about the tax office this week. Yeah. In other news on the capitalist front, as a white man who's very into Collingwood, I'm waiting with bated breath to see what fantastic trades happen today. It's trade week, where human beings are turned into commodities in the AFL. It's all very exciting. I don't know if you're into it, Anneke, as much as me, but I'm personally hoping we get rid of Jordan De Goey. Serial misogynist.
No comment. No comment.
There you go. Anneke defending misogyny.
Like a real white man.
Yeah, exactly. So lots of interesting things happening. Shameful. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to leave this one into the final edit.
I'm definitely cutting out you saying that.
I actually had a video. I had a video that I wanted to play for you guys. I'm not sure, Geordie, if you've actually seen this one.
I don't think I have.
It's
we got to see it first.
Yeah.
It's Donald Trump.
I don't think there's anything going to get me in heaven. Okay, I really don't. I think I'm not maybe heaven bound. I may be in heaven right now as we fly an Air Force One. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to make heaven.
I think he's right for the first time in his life.
Yeah, I think it's like one of those things that's quite remarkable about Donald Trump is that he is like leading the authoritarian charge, reshaping world politics, doing everything he can to get America ready to fight, the upcoming wars. And he just tells the truth about everything in a way that other politicians just would never dare to. And this guy has his base in America is evangelical Christians.
Yeah, Christian nationalists.
Who want to do everything they can to get into heaven. And the guy that they hero worship almost on a godlike level is like, I'm not getting into heaven.
I mean, it's fair. Like he knows what he is. And I don't think he's ever thought about getting into heaven as a particular priority of his life goals. It's a bit like Ronald Reagan, he was a massive ally with the evangelicals, even though he'd spent his whole life advocating for things like abortion rights and whatever. And he just flipped on a dime to become a Christian hero. And I think Trump is a bit like that, except that he's a less good actor.
Yeah.
And so when put on the spot, he speaks from the heart.
And he definitely isn't getting into any good heaven, that's for sure. Like Donald Trump deserves to rot in hell.
Is there a good heaven?
Well, I mean, no, maybe not. We'll leave that up to
Who's
another
to say?
podcast to decide.
Just wanted to check, we are a socialist podcast after all, but,
Well, as we talked about, I'm a Maltese woman, so, the Catholicism still runs true. But back to reality. Yeah, like Donald Trump, what's he spent the last sort of week doing? Just gloating about this plan that he has cooked up with Netanyahu and Tony Blair about, reshaping Gaza in the image of like capitalism, and just this project of trying to sort of show the world that he apparently is responsible for peace, but it's not really a real peace, I would say.
It's pretty enraging. I mean, we've already heard reports that 6 Palestinians were killed in the last 24 hours since the so-called ceasefire was announced. Israel continues to deny food entry into Gaza. They initially said they would increase the number of trucks to, I think, 400 a day, but now they've carved that to punish Hamas for the crime of not being able to find the bodies of dead Israeli hostages from the rubble that Israel itself produced. I mean, it's absolutely dystopian, Orwellian. So the situation in Gaza remains extremely bad, and the people remain in famine-like situations. There is no concrete or, reconstruction capacity in general. Yeah. There's not going to be bulldozers allowed into Gaza for some time. There's, just the cleanup will take years and billions of dollars. So this is a long-term crisis. And the best case scenario really is that Gaza becomes a shanty town for these refugees. The worst case scenario is obviously the war just starts up again. Yeah. And to call this peace is just laughable.
And I mean, it's been obviously a pattern that Israel has engaged in for the last many decades, where they engage on a genocidal campaign, mass bombings, mass killings, and turn Gaza into rubble. And then when there's a so-called peace that is agreed to, what they do is they limit the amount of, like Omar said, construction goods that can come in. So in previous years before the recent genocidal campaign, Israel calculated to the, calorie, how much food that they could allow in to mean that they didn't like, you know, kill everybody, but just keep people at the sort of this terrible, terrible state, refuse to let construction goods in to rebuild hospitals with the claim that, well, if we send it in, then they're just going to be building tunnels. And so it's just the bombs might stop, but this dehumanization and destruction of human life just continues on.
It's pretty horrific. And like, yeah, as you've said, we've seen it all before. And I'm just seeing like, I'm just seeing like TikToks of like people shocked at the discrepancy between like the hostage numbers, like people going on about, like Netanyahu was going on about 28 hostages. I can't actually remember the number. And then, but why are like 1,500, I can't remember the number of Palestinians being released in this agreement? 2,000. Why are there so many more? And it's like, that's just a tiny proportion of the total number of hostages, of Palestinian hostages that Netanyahu has. And people are outraged at that discrepancy.
Yeah, because they call them prisoners, but what Israel is doing is stealing, like kidnapping people who have been engaged in legitimate forms of resistance against the state of Israel, or sometimes not even just engaged in resistance. They just pick people up.
And disappear them.
And put them in prisons. Like one of the people who was released from an Israeli prison in this time around has been in jail for 25 years, has been separated from his family for 25 years, and, you know, was just recently released, and you've seen some of the scenes of him reuniting with his family. But it's just, why is there a discrepancy between numbers? Well, because Israel is a state that is armed to the hilt, that has absolute disregard for the Palestinian population and is happy to kill them and lock them up for decades and decades and decades. And then also, I think the discrepancy also points to Israel values Israeli lives far, far more obviously than they value Palestinian lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's still around 9,000 Palestinians in Israeli dungeons. Most of them are imprisoned without charge. And they call it administrative detention, which is a delightful term to describe being imprisoned without any charges being put to you, any chance of defending yourself, no legal process to go through to get yourself freed. Many of them are children, thousands and thousands of them are Palestinian children. We've also seen footage of settlers on the West Bank harassing Palestinians in the aftermath of the so-called ceasefire, saying, don't you feel good for a moment? We're coming after you next. And the Israeli government actually was distributing leaflets in the West Bank saying anyone who celebrates will be at risk of arrest. So you're not allowed to feel joy at the end of a genocide or a supposed end of the genocide in Gaza if you're Palestinian. And this has a long history. As soon as October 7 took place, it was obvious to people with some history and knowledge of this issue that Israel was going to kill tens of thousands of people, at least 10 to 1, possibly 50 to 1. And that's sort of what we've seen. And that's pretty much tells you a lot about the value of life that the Israelis have.
Yeah. It's crazy seeing like, you know, that pamphlet, and we'll put the pamphlet up on the YouTube video if you're watching, like, you know, we're watching you pretty much, like a threat from the IDF. And then like even like watching the hostages be released, like you can see Israeli prisoners come back smiling and whatever, and then Palestinian prisoners come back missing limbs, like unable to walk, like emaciated. Like it's just like horrific.
And I think the other sort of thing is that the bombing might have stopped in the mass way that it was going on for the last 2 years. But there's so many elements of Israel's campaign against the Palestinian population that is just continuing. So like you both have mentioned, the aid trucks are actually not coming in the numbers that were going to be guaranteed. The illegal settlements in the West Bank are expanding, and they have been expanding over the course of this genocide. There have been blockades on Palestinian towns in the West Bank as well, where people have been arrested by the Israeli Defense Force. And there have been food and water shortages in the West Bank for this last 2 years also. But then also just the question of Israeli-backed militias that are inside Gaza as well. So this war hasn't ended because the illegal occupation of Palestinian land has not ended, and it hasn't stopped from expanding since 1948 and actually prior to that too.
Yeah, I think that's important. Even of Gaza, there's Israel currently occupies a majority of Gaza.
Yeah.
So that's just Gaza. And then you take into consideration the West Bank, where Israel has taken more and more and more territory to the point where now there's absolutely no contiguous territory from which to base some sort of hypothetical two-state solution, which most people now acknowledge is finished, except the absolute political elite who like to go on with the charade to give cover for Israel's expansion. And so there's just no desire to stop. And Israel's clearly had its hands tied by the US for now. And Trump has come in and said this needs to happen, partly for his own personal prestige, partly because I think the Israelis really pissed off Qatar and the Gulf states with their bombing in Qatar against the Hamas negotiators. And the Gulf states are a very important part of global capitalism that Trump... The Gulf states were the first countries that Trump visited when he became president. So the fact that Israel bombed Qatar, the country with the largest American base in the Middle East, was a big mistake. And Trump had to wrap them over the knuckles. But despite that, moving forward, whether it's next month, next year, in 3 years' time, we know that Israel will start again its bombing campaigns. We've seen 4 or 5 wars on Gaza since 2008, CAS-led, and that's going to keep happening. Yeah.
I mean, I guess the other thing is, did you guys see the video from Trump? I think it was today, a couple of hours ago. We're recording on the 15th. Trump is answering questions about, when is Hamas going to disarm? And he had this to say.
How long will it take Hamas to disarm, and can you guarantee that is going to happen?
Well, they're going to disarm, and because they said they were going to disarm. And if they don't disarm, we will disarm them. And it'll happen quickly and perhaps violently.
So Trump saying, they're going to disarm, Hamas will have to disarm, and if they don't do it, we will force them to do it. It will happen quickly, it'll happen violently. So on the one hand, there's this gloating of, I'm a, harbinger of peace in the Middle East. And on the other hand, this is a warning to the people inside Gaza that if they don't lay down their weapons, if they don't stop sort of resisting, if Hamas doesn't disarm, then America will take the leash off Israel straight away and give them the green light, to do what they need to do to disarm.
Yeah, I mean, it's just disgusting. Trump's been playing a really careful game. As I said, he's sort of disciplining the Israelis to some extent. But then he's really determined not to seem weak at all in relation to Hamas or the Palestinians. So he had to be pressured quite hard to even invite a Palestinian representative to the conference that happened in Egypt, the so-called peace conference. Of course, the representative they invited was Mahmoud Abbas, who's a dictator, unelected, multi-millionaire, scumbag, mouthpiece for the Israeli and Americans. So that's happening on one side. And then on the other, he's trying to manage the Israelis and give Netanyahu a political boost, even as he clips his wings. So, yeah, we're going to keep seeing this sort of balancing. But the key point to make for socialists is that how dare the Americans have anything to say about what goes on inside Palestine? The Palestinians should be able to choose their own political leadership. They should have access to armed resistance, yes, like every other country on earth.
Yeah.
Why should they be the only peoples who do not have access to a military? And the only thing the Americans should be doing is telling Israel to get the fuck out and to ending all arms and financial support to Israel. Of course, that's not going to happen. Israel is essentially the 51st American state. But the idea that the Americans or the British or the UN or the Australian government should have anything to do with who the Palestinians choose to lead them and how they're organized moving forward is just pure imperial logic. There is absolutely no way that anyone thinks that it would be reasonable for the West to have an opinion over, French, who should be the government in France or America, like the idea that that's normal for governments to discuss. But always in the global South, in oppressed nations, we see this kind of thing happening, and it's terrible.
Yeah. And there's also like on disarmament, like very soon after the peace kind of deal thing was announced, like Hamas came and said, we're not disarming while we're under occupation. Like we have a right to resistance against an occupying force, but we will disarm to a Palestinian authority. And then while that is happening, while those statements are being made and Palestinians are being allowed to kind of to the north of Gaza, they're just discovering, thousands of unexploded bombs, thousands of abandoned weapons left by the IDF. Like, what do you expect to happen here?
Yeah.
People are still dying in Lebanon from Israeli cluster bombs dropped in the 1980s. They're still finding, and those bombs were banned then, and they're banned now, and they're still being used by the Israelis. So yeah, this is just par for the course.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, on the question of who gets to decide what happens next, the sort of Palestinian population is denied any capacity to make decisions about their lives. Like they have political leaders in the form of the Palestinian Authority and Hamas, but the Palestinian population, that like when's their vote's going to happen? When are they going to get access to elections? Like they actually have had elections in the past, and that meant that Israel bombed the shit out of them because they chose leaders that Israel wasn't happy with.
Well, that's when the siege began.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all of this talk about, discussions about what happens next, but the people who are responsible for making the decisions are the same people who have been killing the Palestinian population in a genocide for 2 years and occupations for decades. So this idea of self-determination, nationhood is just completely denied for the Palestinians in a way. Yeah.
No, go on.
No, you go, Emma.
Sorry. That's true. And we've seen this happen before. Like there were actually big protests in Gaza in 2019 against Hamas, which Israel tried to weaponize, and the people involved rejected that.
Yeah.
And this kind of slaughter that's gone on actually makes it harder for the democratic aspirations of the Palestinian people to be promoted and achieved because, people are dying and they're struggling to survive. But obviously a nation under siege and under brutal occupation is going to be pushed together. It's harder to have independent political space. And the same thing happened in Iraq. There were big protests happening against Saddam Hussein in the lead up to the Iraq War, but then the American intervention just destroys that democratic aspiration and changes the whole nature of politics. So as socialists, there is absolutely no reason for us to be uncritical cheerleaders of any political faction in politics here in Australia or abroad. We have to approach things critically, and both Hamas and Fatah, the other main faction in Palestinian politics, have got a lot of things wrong and a lot of problems with their politics. But in the context of occupation, the imperative is to just resist and survive. And the only way that we can help the Palestinian people achieve a better political outcome is to get the boots off their necks and get the Americans and the Israelis and all the Western governments who back them to withdraw.
I think another thing that comes out of all of this is actually the rewriting of history that's going on just even immediately after this ceasefire has been agreed to. And one of the rewritings that's going on is that basically the Americans have been fighting to end this the whole time. We've been trying really hard to get a ceasefire deal, but clearly, now we've been able to do it. But Joe Biden. Yeah. I'm rewriting history.
Yep.
Biden could have forced something like this. Israel can't carry out a war without American support. They rely on America for weapons shipments. They rely on America for cash injections.
Political cover.
Exactly.
The Iron Dome.
Yeah. This is all like central support that America gives. So if America said, you have to stop this, otherwise we're going to withdraw that funding, we're going to stop sending you weapons, well, then they would just have to follow suit. They're not capable without that support. So Joe Biden was very, very happy to let this war wage on for the time that he was the president of America. And then I think that Trump and Netanyahu have both been talking about, well, why can this particular moment be the one where they actually do agree to it? Omar raised the question of Israel stepped too far in Qatar. But the other thing was because America was able to achieve some of its own strategic interests in the Middle East throughout the course of this war. One being the bombing of Iranian nuclear sites and the sort of way that they were able to behead certain parts of Hezbollah in Lebanon too. So America has been able to achieve some of the things that it has wanted to achieve in the Middle East. And then I think there's also the question of the way that the war has become a destabilizing factor in the West as well.
Absolutely. I mean, Trump said, we can't carry on anymore. He said it in the speech to the Knesset, that Israel is fighting the whole world and you can't win against the whole world. And that's clearly not the ruling classes, the elite. It's clearly he's talking about the movements. So I think that's a cost. And I think we can say we contributed to that. Unfortunately, we didn't contribute enough. That's the reality. A stronger left would have been able to stop this war earlier and put more pressure. It's very, very disappointing and frustrating that it took 2 years for working class movement to get into action. And even as much as we celebrate that, we have to be real that a stronger left would have been able to do that earlier. But moving forward, the only thing we can do is to build a left that can make such a thing possible. Going back to Joe Biden, though, I think it's absolutely correct that Israel received billions and billions of dollars of US funding in the last couple of years. I think something like 30 billion is the highest estimate I've seen, which is very low, as we talked about previously, by American standards, but it's still a lot of money for the Israeli side of things. And so that could have been stopped. Also, there's no way that Israel could have bombed Iran without American assistance, both in terms of refueling, in terms of targeting, all that kind of stuff. The Iron Dome rockets, Israel was running out of the rockets used to fire and shoot down missiles and so on. America was resupplying those. If the Israeli society was forced to deal with the reality of missiles landing on their homes regularly, that would have been a pressure. So by preventing that from happening, the Americans allowed the Israeli war to be very, very cheap on the Israeli side. There were very few lives lost, no infrastructure lost, and therefore it could go on. So Joe Biden's absolutely complicit in this. And actually, what Trump has done for his own cynical reasons shows exactly what Biden could have done a year ago.
That's right.
Or more.
Have you guys seen some of the statements from like Western world leaders talking about the ceasefire? Like Penny Wong, Keir Starmer.
Yeah, an elbow. Yeah.
This, it makes you so enraged, actually, because it's like, on the one hand, we read all of these articles about Donald Trump is such a threat to XYZ, know, and we can see with our own eyes the way that Donald Trump is reshaping world politics in a more violent, authoritarian, racist direction. But then all of these, Penny Wong is the worst for it. It's like Donald Trump's done something that no one else could achieve, and we're so happy that Donald Trump's in our corner, fighting this good fight, getting peace in the Middle East. The simping for Donald Trump that's going on by Western leaders is like mind-boggling to me.
Yeah, it's pathetic. And it's the same, like particularly here, like the same people who would have absolutely attacked the Liberals for making those same statements had they been in power, now doing it themselves. It's just like, it is astonishing.
Yeah.
And it's the narrative where you've got to manage him. And so flattery is the best
It's
policy.
how you manage him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's like dealing with a king or something. That's sort of that's the level of politics. But yeah, I think like the campaigning for Trump to get a peace prize really crescendoed last week. And Penny Wong and Albanese and a bunch of other people were saying, yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. His speech to the Knesset was also...
It's like an Oscar speech.
Yeah, a right-wing Israeli website described it as that. I thought that was quite funny and accurate. It was acting as if he was in this like body of humanitarians, and congratulating them on their peacemaking achievements after they've literally obliterated a people and a strip the size of Sydney. Mm-hmm. But I think this shows what a depraved society we live in. You know, if China had done a fraction of what Israel had done in Taiwan, for example, you could imagine the international appropriation, or the Russians. Like the Russians have done a lot of terrible things in Ukraine, but they haven't laid siege to and destroyed like Kiev, for example. If Russia had done that, you could imagine the Western response. And so this whole thing is just a charade of imperial arrogance. And the fact that it gets just accepted in the West and multiplied and magnified by social democratic, the New York Times, the Washington Post, and so on, tells you what these people really think about working class people's lives, the lives of the oppressed, and what they really value.
Yeah. I just can't get over the fact that like ICE is going around kidnapping Americans in the streets, and then, you know, Donald Trump's in Israel being like to the president, why don't you just pardon the prime minister? Like what is actually going on?
Yeah. You got to question like, what does peace mean to these people? Like the word peace just gets thrown around by these world leaders. And when they're talking about peace, I guess what they mean is a situation where they're free to pursue the imperial aims and interests of their countries. Peace doesn't mean children having enough food to eat to mean that their inside organs don't begin to shut down and their brain stops developing. Peace doesn't mean people being able to access fertile land in Gaza to be able to grow crops, to be able to feed themselves. Peace doesn't mean an end to the bombings. Peace means Western imperialism being able to carry on unabated and uninterrupted.
Peace means submission.
Yeah.
Surrender. Obey the authority.
And like peace means a lack of response from ordinary people. It means no crisis, no chaos. Peace means the status quo reemerges and profits can be made.
Exactly. Also, the profits can keep flowing like they used to.
Yeah.
Speaking of peace, I reckon we should talk about the Peace Prize. Because even though Trump didn't get it, another heroic freedom fighter did. And I think we should acknowledge her. A woman of colour, no less.
That's right. Yeah. I guess it's okay if a far-right supporter of Israel wins the Nobel Peace Prize. Trump said, and I didn't ask her to give it to me. He was very proud of himself for that one.
The Norwegian Nobel Committee has decided to award the Nobel Peace Prize for 2025 to Maria Corina Machado,
who is a part of the Venezuelan sort of far right, who has been leading sort of a anti-democratic movement in Venezuela. Like, because the thing is, right, There actually are people in Venezuela who are fighting for
for exactly the things that the Nobel Peace Committee said that she was.
That's right. Who are fighting for an extension of democracy, workers' rights, the right for the left to be able to organise. So there's like actually genuine people in Venezuela who are pushing for left-wing moves inside that country. And yet the Nobel Peace Prize are like, fascist.
Yeah. How good.
She should get that one.
Yeah. I mean, Venezuela's just become a sort of meme for the right, hasn't it? It functions in a similar way to the USSR did of an earlier generation. Obviously, it's a much less important country, but it's socialist, it's a dictatorship, it's economically a basket case, and it basically gives the right this wonderful, and it's Latin American, which now fits with the racism and immigrant issue. So it kind of is this perfect thing for Trump to deploy all his talking points in the aim of promoting American capitalism. And it's having violent impacts. Like there's a lot of different ones, but one of the main things is he's bombed like 6 Venezuelan boats in international water or Venezuelan water. I'm pretty sure none of them have been in American waters. That's right. But he just says they're drug shipping boats. Which they may or may not be. There's no evidence provided. There's no requirement for such a thing in this world, and people are dying in every one of these bombing campaigns. People are dying, and it's just deflected as, oh well, this is a war on socialism, so that's okay.
And in a lot of the research that's been done about what are these boats actually about, who are they actually bombing? People make the point that if it actually was a drug trafficking operation, there wouldn't be 11 people on board these boats. So the first one that they bombed and killed literally everybody on board had 11 people on it, and it had actually started to turn around. So it had been sort of sailing in the direction of America, but they saw all of the American naval forces and helicopters and whatever, like, let's get the fuck out of here. And at that point, they were bombed multiple times in order to sink the boat. And so one of the hypotheses is actually the boats that they're sinking are people who are engaging in moving humans around. So trying to get people, to be able to go into the United States. And regardless, even if they were transporting drugs.
Exactly.
America's just given themselves the right to
just bomb.
Yeah. Like, what's the phrase? Like a judge and executioner all in one, with no recourse to justice. The usual practice for drug trafficking interceptions is the drug enforcement agency stops the boat, goes on, searches, seizes, and imprisons, which, I'm not saying that I support.
And then distributes.
Themselves. Yeah, thank you very much.
That's right. So I definitely don't support, American drug enforcement agents to be traveling on the high seas or anything like that. But this is a remarkable sort of turn into just these completely unlawful murderings of people in international waters.
100%. And you look at best practice international drug smuggling, and it's like some guy, usually one person or an unmanned kind of vehicle that's remote controlled, or one guy who has very little knowledge of any of the operations, and is just told, pick it up here and go here, and that's it. Like, not 11 people on a boat.
And I think that it ties into a broader shift that's happening in America's sort of domestic and foreign policy, which is sort of shoot first and never ask any questions.
Yeah.
Like there has been the masked gangs in America of ICE. They don't tell anybody who they are.
Yeah.
And you are expected to comply. And if you don't comply, and if you do comply, whatever, you're going to get taken by these agents, and your family won't know where you are.
Yep.
You can get deported to El Salvador. You can get deported to a third country. So there's just a marked increase in sort of state-sanctioned violence, murder, kidnapping that's going on right now.
Yeah, what do they say? If you end up in that mega prison in El Salvador, you literally can't be traced.
Yeah.
They just throw you in, lock the door behind you, and that's that. I mean, going back to the Peace Prize thing, so we should be clear to our listeners that Venezuela is not actually a socialist country, but it continues to call itself one, or it did last time I checked. And so it becomes this useful foil. But yeah, the right wing in Venezuela literally have tried to organize multiple coups over
That's
the
right.
years. And their goal is not to expand democracy or anything like that, but simply to realign the country with US empire, to once again have America get access to cheap Venezuelan oil.
Yeah, and privatize the oil. Yeah.
Exactly. To destroy any remnants of the welfare state that was introduced by Hugo Chavez a long time ago, that Maduro himself has been undermining. You know, that's what they want from this, and that's what they've been rewarded for by the International Peace Prize Committee.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know, Henry Kissinger won the Peace Prize when he was involved in overseeing the Vietnam War. Barack Obama won it in 2009 when he was like bombing Somalia and Yemen and overseeing the war in Afghanistan. I mean, this is
I mean, it's fitting for a prize invented by the guy who created, the first bomb. So, yeah, why not? Let's keep it going.
Yeah. It's sort of like at this point, if you're on the Nobel Peace Prize winners list, it's like...
Yeah. You're in good company.
Yeah, totally.
Riding out the party line.
The other thing that came out this week was a statement from Pauline Hanson about people from Palestine. Did you guys see that?
Yeah.
So she puts out this statement saying that now that the war is finished, in her, like she says the war's over, we have to get rid of all of the Gazan refugees who
Send
are
them
currently
back.
in Australia and stop processing all of the people because, well, they can go back to their countries now.
not to their homes, of course.
No, just to some, a desolated...
Rubble.
Yeah. So
Probably, yeah.
I raised Pauline Hanson because, well, obviously that statement is just absolutely disgusting. Pauline Hanson has been on a campaign for the last couple of weeks specifically about Palestinian refugees. She said that all of the Palestinian refugees in Australia are agents for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and that they should all be sent back. So she said that even when, in her words, the war was still ongoing. But Pauline Hanson is at the moment trying to construct a political movement of the far right. And they are the March for Australia crew that she has been working closely with, that have racist, fascists, Nazis involved in them. They're actually organising another demonstration for the 19th of October, so this Sunday.
Certainly
So
are.
yeah, we'll all be there.
Definitely.
If you're in Melbourne, come to the counter demo.
That's right.
Yeah, 11 o'clock at the State Library, is it?
That's right. Yeah,
And then interstate, I think there are some happening somewhere. Is that right?
that's true.
Yeah.
We'll put the link to the counter protests that are going on in the country in the show notes so that people can look them up. But if you're listening and don't want to click on a link, you can just type in carf.melbourne, carf.melbourne into Instagram, and there's a roundup of the national, the counter protests that are happening around the country. And I think it's important that people come along because we need to build a street movement and a political movement against the far right. Everywhere that they try and organise, it's important that there's a political response to them. And the counter demonstrations are a good way to show these racists that they're not just able to march through the streets unopposed.
Yeah. Definitely. We should all be there. Did anyone see the pamphlets that they've been distributing?
The pamphlets that the far right have been distributing? No.
Yeah, the march. So there's like this whole time they're like, we're not a Nazi thing and all that kind of stuff. I think all of that has very roundly been dispelled. But their most recent pamphlets have a list of websites at the bottom. And there's two that aren't explicitly Nazi. One is just Sam Hyde's Twitter handle for some reason. It's just a, content creator.
Sure.
That's right wing, but not like, I guess, arguably not a Nazi, and Tucker Carlson's like website. And then the rest are literal just Nazi websites like whiteaustralia.org and like just a bunch of Nazi websites. And that's the bottom
And
of
that's the official material.
That's their March for Australia pamphlet that is going around and they're handing out. And it's just, yeah, we're not Nazis. Don't check the websites at the bottom. We did put 2 not explicitly, just very far right people there. The rest are Nazi websites, but we're not,
Incredible. Well,
yeah, there's definitely been like a polarization on the right as well as the left in recent years. Do you want to talk about the superannuation stuff? Because I kind of feel like that's important because there's these 2 things happening in Australian politics. One is like the right is getting active, the far right, and the Liberals are in a crisis. But then Labor just keeps doing Labor things of just refusing to deliver anything solid to the working class. And this week we had the embarrassing backflip on the superannuation tax changes that Chalmers had been pushing for and Albanese clearly quashed. Now, for those of you who don't know, because superannuation is not the most like glamorous topic, it is actually a really important thing that a lot of working class people are forced to give up a chunk of their money to put in speculating on the stock exchange. Rich people have a lot more money and they use the super system as a tax break, basically. And because the tax on super is way lower than the tax on regular income. So you can give money to super before you pay income tax and that lowers your income tax. And so there are heaps of people, not millions, but tens of thousands of very wealthy Australians who have more than $3 million in super. The grand total is 90,000. And so the Labor Party was saying, this 90,000, we propose that the tax break they get for the money they put in super should be slightly less.
Yeah.
They're still going to get a tax break, but it should just be slightly less than they're currently getting. And this became the basis of a massive scare campaign, hey?
Yeah, it was pretty big. And it was like, anyone over, $3 million in super, we're going to tax you a little bit. Those people are fine. There's 90,000 of them. The Liberals are in absolute shambles and in no position to oppose this whatsoever. The Greens are on board. The Greens were like, it should be probably a bit more. And yeah, through absolutely no kind of opposition. There were some, economists being like, oh, you can't tax unrealized gains. Like, what are these people? These people are just asset rich. They're not liquid. How are they supposed to pay this tax? And it's like, who gives a fuck? Sell a house or 2 or 3 or whatever you've got. You've got $3 million in super, over $3 million of super. And it's, fucking 0.5% of people with superannuation accounts. They'll be fine. They can just sell something or talk to their financial advisor.
Exactly.
And arrange that. And then, despite no opposition or no actual opposition because the Liberals are in such a shitty position amongst themselves, they've just gone and backflipped all by themselves and said we'll only tax realized gains and it's gonna, I don't know, they just went back on it. They went back on a genuinely alright idea and somehow watered it down themselves.
I feel like this is becoming a theme of this podcast, which is just how fucking pathetic the Labor Party is.
Absolutely useless. What is that? You have probably the biggest majority in Parliament that we've seen for a very long time, and you are why do this?
And then working class people, they end up paying far more tax in the form of the GST, in the form, well, actually, I don't know if that's true. I don't know that much.
Proportionally, it's true.
Proportionally, it's true. Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
And their wages have not increased in line with inflation. So the cost of living for working class people, what they put into the economy, all of that is far larger than these wealthy fuckheads. And yet any, tax on them would be a crime against humanity in the eyes of the people who run this country.
Yeah.
Totally. I mean, the whole system is a rot. The point of super is to be, firstly, it was to undermine pensions. There used to be proper livable pensions in this country. And the super system was a neoliberal measure where workers had to pay for their own retirement. So that was a big attack. But then in that context, why should people be able to put farms in their superannuation? It's just it's literally a tax fraud. If you want to buy a house as a retirement plan, why should the government give you a tax break on that?
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. But this is the argument. These are literally the two arguments. There are farmers who put their commercial properties in their super to avoid paying tax, and they're the victims somehow. It's actually incredible. So I think the fact that this was being talked about as an attack on farmers and even everyday people, the Liberal Party was saying eventually working class people, just average income people, are going to be affected. And it's that's true, because in 1,000 years, inflation will mean that $3 million isn't very much money.
Yeah.
But I'm sure between now and then there'll be other adjustments. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And that is one of the concessions that they made in the backflip, is indexing the $3 million figure. But on the points that you said, the pension, super getting rid of a pension that people could live on, and that disappearing, that hasn't disappeared. Politicians and judges are still on those pensions, and you know what is not touched by this fucking policy are those defined benefits.
Yeah.
Really?
Which is, they're not taxed. And also to backflip on not taxing unrealized gains is incentivizing and subsidizing the hoarding of wealth. That is precisely what not taxing unrealized gains does. They also did something interesting because of all of the money that they're going to lose from this backflip, which they'd already, accounted for in various budgets and things like that. They're introducing, they're going to rate, this is quite, I think it's really funny. It affects, I think 80 people,
80?
Between 80 or 800. I can't remember it.
Okay.
It's very small. People with over $10 million in superannuation accounts, still not affecting unrealized gains. So, the very few people in this country with over $10 million in super, they're increasing the tax rate from 30% to 40%.
Wow.
Great
It's
job.
so brave. So brave.
That's heroic.
Yeah, it's really incredible.
So those people are still paying less on their super than an income earner who earns over 90 grand, right?
Yeah, well, pretty much, yeah.
Because that's 42. It's 42%. Right?
Yeah, well, if you have a HEX and you're on, the 30% income bracket or whatever, then you're paying effectively 39.5% tax. So you're paying, if you're on, I don't know what the number is. I think if you're on maybe it's 120K and you have a HEX debt, you're paying more than someone with $10 million in super after you've graduated. It's just it is incredible. It's still whatever. But on the heroism comment, the Liberals literally called it, I've wrote this down.
Oh
it's a victory for Australians.
Oh my God.
Now that people with over $3 million.
It's a victory for members of the Liberal Party. I saw an article this week that said that the average age of a Liberal Party member is 75 years old. And a couple of months ago, there was an article that said the biggest expense for Liberal Party branches was floral arrangements for funerals.
They're
sad,
fucked.
isn't it?
Sorry, I did the wrong emotion. It's funeral.
It's about as sad as Charlie Kirk. Yeah, it's tragic stuff. But the thing about the failure to prosecute any kind of class war politics by Labor, it's so deliberate.
Yeah.
Because the 3 million thing, all you had to say was this only affects 0.5%. Why are the Liberals standing up for the multi-millionaires of Australia and not the 99.5% of people who would have more money for houses and education and so on? But they can't do that. Well, they can, but they don't want to do that. They've clearly been workshopped from the 2019 Bill Shorten thing.
Yeah.
We don't want to do anything or say anything that even comes across as class war. And even when we're doing something a little bit redistributive, we're not going to say it is. We're not going to emphasize it. We're not going to argue for it. Of course, the other big thing they're not doing, I know, Geordie, negative gearing's a passion of yours, but a much more important more important tax is capital gains tax.
Definitely.
That's the one, because rich people don't earn income. They make their living on capital gains. That is the appreciation of their various assets. And the fact that that is taxed so low in this country is the biggest handout to the wealthy, much bigger than negative gearing or anything like that.
Yeah, definitely. Like, monetarily, but also like culturally, because it incentivizes, investing and investing in like commodifying, like, things that we need to survive, so that you can make a little bit more money and whatever. But on your class war comments, I saw a video of 2019 Bill Shorten come up on my TikTok feed, and he like said the words class war, and I almost like recoiled. I was like, what the fuck is this? Had to go find the year.
Alternate reality.
Insane. Absolutely insane.
This all goes to show that it's never been more important to build a left-wing working class alternative to the major parties. We need working class politics so that we can fight against the likes of Pauline Hanson, so we continue to build the movement for Palestine, liberation in Palestine, but also so that we can actually fight to make society more equal and more democratic. We live in such an unequal society where wealth is hoarded at the top, and ordinary people have to work and labour and struggle every single day in order to make profits for the rich and powerful. So if you're pissed off about that, it's good that you're listening to the Party Line. And we want to make a plug for people to join the socialist movement. So whatever state you're in, join the socialists and get involved in the fight. Thanks so much for listening to episode 3 of the Party Line.
We'll see you soon.
See you guys.
Ciao.
See you, fellow whiteys.
Cut that.
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.